Hello and welcome back to this episode of whatever the fuck we're calling this podcast. I am Miki and I am joined today not by Xelloss but by two guests. First of all, we have Nyard.
Hey, you might know me from me shouting out this podcast on my channel, but if you don't, I have a channel. It's called Nyard. You should look at it if you like what I have to say.
Please go watch the Mikicast. It's fucking great. He's underselling
Miki's
himself.
on it too. Miki's on it too. We've already gathered past experiences in podcasting together on the Mikicast, where he has been a co-host, I think, 3 times already? I don't know. Something like that.
I think 3 times maybe. And we also have a first-time guest on, I think, any R-Chord related podcast, Will.
Indeed. I am Will the Dill. I am the resident Symphogear expert, which will be what we are talking about today.
You cut me off at the pass. I was going to lead into I was just going to go, we are Symphogear, motherfuckers. Let's go. All right.
Or should we call it Symphogear? Because I think we're all really simping for Symphogear.
Well, I mean, that's a given. It's I think it is not just one of the best anime to come out in the post 2010s, but also like the most anime to come out in the post 2010s.
Fuck yeah. The most anime and like unabashedly, unapologetically, like just, anime in your fucking face. That's one thing that actually kind of like just, I'm softly sliding into the topic right now, but that's, I think, one thing that kind of alienated me at first when I was first watching it, because I was looking at it like, not like, wow, this is anime bullshit. Nice. I was looking at it like, oh, this is anime bullshit.
Yeah, there's some stuff in there that gets pretty uncomfortable at some points. And I think there's just like straight up a shot, in one of the episodes where it's just like focusing on Tsubasa's like ass and puffy vulva.
Yeah, for like a straight 20 seconds while she's like speaking about her fucking ideologies and shit. It's pretty weird.
It is kind of fucking weird.
And
there's
I guess there's also like one very gratuitous torture scene where we're getting a good look at the boobies while the torturing is happening. That's
I have
that.
some thoughts about that. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it is very exploitative. I almost said kind of exploitative. No, it's very exploitative. But
a very
there's a
kind
sense
of like
it's calling back specifically, at least I think, to Nanoha. In particular, the relationship between Fate and her abusive mother figure.
That
which
makes
is
a lot
also
of
framed
sense.
in this kind of like exploitative S&M sort of way.
Yeah,
but
that does make a lot of sense, but at the same time,
It's not excusing it.
It's not even good in Nanoha. So.
No, it isn't good in Nanoha. But people like Fate, which is what I was thinking about, is like the logic here is like, this is our like signpost to like, yeah, Chris is going to be like a Fate-like character. She's going to join the team.
Yes.
And I think we're going to have an interesting relationship to kind of being semi-apologetic for what is being shown, but also fully indulging and endorsing it. Because I feel like that's kind of the duality that Symphogear keeps always writing. Like, one of the common reactions just looking at like screenshots of it is like, what's up with these fucking stupid designs? And you kind of have to go, well, they are kind of stupid, but they're fucking kick-ass as well. Have you seen how she like rides on that fucking gigantic sword? That's kind of badass,
That's fucking cool as fuck, man.
That's kind of stupid, but
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I mean
that's something I fucking love about it. Just like in general, it's just like it takes that really stupid, like over the top anime aesthetic that you would see in like garbage, like harem animes or like isekais and shit with stupid like croissants or whatever. But then it actually like goes all in on that and so hard that it kind of like becomes awesome again.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that got me into Symphogear in the first place. I wasn't like you, Nyard. I know you had a really rough reaction to the first season your first time through.
Oh, yeah.
For me, it was... Yeah, for me, it was... I think at a point I kind of understood that I don't think I caught so much of like the Rose of Versailles Utena stuff that we see in the very beginning episodes. which doesn't really come into play until later seasons, which is why I overlooked it, I think. But like, there was the point, I think maybe, shortly after the that fucking scene with Fine and Chris, where I was like, oh wait, this entire thing is just a celebration of anime.
Indeed.
Yeah. I think as Will and I, because the first time I watched it, because Will basically is the resident Symphogear sensei, and whenever someone is getting around to watching Symphogear, there's always a Will close by, which will join in, watch along, and talk, and reply, and discuss, and analyze, and that's why we love Will as our resident Symphogear person. But I think we had a running theory going that we were developing as I was going through the series, and which also fully applies to season 1, that it is kind of a celebration of a very specific kind of otaku legacy. So I see it like kind of in a tradition, and I know, Miki, this is like a sore spot for you, because I think for as much influence as it takes, like from Utena and Rose of Versailles, there's a ton of influence of stuff like Evangelion and Gurren Lagann as well. And
I think the comparison to Imaishi here is very fucking valid. This is like, I think the vibe of Symphogear is very much in Imaishi's wheelhouse, but it draws on a slightly different set of inspirations, right?
Well, it kind of draws on everything, right?
Everything.
We're talking about like this Imaishi stuff and Utena and Rose of Versailles or whatever, but at the same time, Symphogear is so much more than that. Like, there's a lot of tokusatsu influence and Super Robot, and even like just action movies in general.
Yeah, I mean, I like the moment where they're dressed up as Bruce Lee later on.
Yeah, Bruce Lee, and then montage. also Akuma and Ryu from Street Fighter.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like, I literally just call GX the giant robo season because it's a giant robo season. It is very much giant robo, in sort of, where it's getting its thematic ideas, where it's pulling its all this stuff from.
Yeah. And I guess that's like the meta thesis that we've kept developing for Symphogear. Not only that it's like a celebration of like a specific kind of otaku art, but also, so maybe this is the point where I could play. I have always like talked very unprofessionally and very like unreflectedly, but like very vaguely as like kind of an indication about like two kinds of otaku, right? There is like the kind of sense that there's a lot of otaku fiction which has really big ideas about the world, about communication, and it is always very centrally about this topic of like what is hindering people from really connecting with each other. And there's a lot of anime in that kind of tradition. Like, it goes back to Gundam 0079 is very much about the topic, okay, what is preventing us to communicate cleanly with each other? And Gundam 0079 presents ideas of what it would mean to communicate in a better way. Like, Evangelion is very much about how to communicate and how to better communicate my ideas, and who am I even? Like, who is this person who's speaking, who's communicating?
Yeah, and then...
Oh,
can I? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and then Symphogear is just the culmination of all of those. That's what it is to me. It's all of these animes that are basically about that. Symphogear just takes all of them and like goes beyond with that message. It just like reiterates it, but in a, I would say, preferable way to me personally.
Yeah. And that is the way how I think, like, how it draws from all these inspirations, and sometimes even like clearly references those or retreads ground those series has covered thematically, but then the meta thesis that we have to take away, and that is even present in season 1, even though it's like more explicit as we go along and see more seasons. The meta thesis of this is kind of like Symphogear at its core is also very concerned about how do we communicate, and the answer is kind of song. But it's a very specific kind of song. It is not just like singing in itself, but it is the combination of idol singing and fighting with determination and being like the beautiful fighting girl, to look like Tamaki Saito just a little bit. And all of this is channeled through this lens of venerating and celebrating otaku legacy and all the other works that have inspired it. So in my view, there's a strong thesis that in a sense all this otaku art about the communication breakdown is what we use to communicate a better understanding of each other and a better understanding towards people, and what we can find meaningful narratives in, not only for the characters in their way to self-actualization, which they find in all of these inspired stories, but also as like a culture, as like a world, as a way to use art as broadly to bridge the gap of communication. That's like the big meta thesis of all of Symphogear that I think me and Will have like went on to construct.
It's on the meta level, like what Symphogear does in the show with music and songs, it does in real life with otaku art, basically.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna also, it's probably useful to state this meta thesis first, because as we're gonna go not only through season 1, but also the other seasons once we get to them, we will be able to kind of attach it to this thesis, kind of try to flesh out the exact relation there. And I think that is something that I really needed to understand and see, what I didn't see the first time around when I was watching season 1, because as we mentioned already, season 1 really did vibe with me the first time, but now on a rewatch, when I just rewatched it with Will again for this podcast, it immediately connected much more to me. And I saw that all of these ideas that we've developed as we went along are being put in here from the start.
Yeah, they're all being all these ideas that come up again and again in later seasons. I mean, even like the idea of relationship to the past and your parents is something that will be expounded upon in a lot more detail in GX. But here it's even seeded through with Chris, with her relationship to Fine, and with Genjiro, or as I tend to call him, Command Chad, coming in later.
And also her dead parents.
I mentioned that briefly. I mean, all this stuff is sort of being seeded in. There's even, as I briefly mentioned, like they literally just take the thorns from Rose of Versailles. They like within Hibiki's heart, and there's like all these stained glass images. And I think the biggest question for me rewatching this is trying to sort out whether they're an allusion to specifically Utena, because Ikuhara uses stained glass a shit ton in Utena.
True,
or whether that was more leaning towards the visual stylings of Shinbo, who also just throws that shit everywhere. But I don't know. I haven't gotten to the last season yet.
Yeah.
My greatest sin.
Yes, indeed.
The curse of Baal.
You'll get to it. You're gonna have to.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm kind of undecided on the issue, but I'm not really sure. Well, I mean, I guess
what Symphogear does with the curse itself in the final season will like recontextualize the whole show in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
but here
my point was that Shinbo does direct Nanoha, which is referenced in this season. I think there's very clear parallels there. But there's also, like, if we think about it in the sort of like revolutionary otaku works that we were kind of talking about it earlier, he doesn't really have one outside of Cosette, and Cosette is very specific and really complicated.
No doubt. But what I would want to say about like the kind of references, I feel like they are oftentimes invoked like very explicitly in order to call back some of the themes those works carried with them. But also I think references to not only specific works but also styles and specific tropes are very much part of the texture to simply evoke this like very, as we called it earlier, this anime bullshit kind of almost campy feel at times, and it is certainly campy. Like some of the designs are so out there that you are gonna be either like
campy.
Yeah, it is campy as fuck.
But what Symphogear says about this campiness is that we should love it, right?
Yeah,
like it's not something that we should like not enjoy. Like it's the opposite. It's like this campiness is what made us, like, and we should celebrate that.
Yeah,
they use all these big ideas and like other great otaku works to uplift all this like campiness, idol, magical girl bullshit that they use, all over the place, and like exploitative harem shit and like all that. and that crops up again and again and again. But it's all just uplifted by like, yeah, this is what otaku media is, but it's also all these weighty fucking ideas about how we can make people's lives better.
And there's even explicitly a character in the show who always is like, oh, if this was an anime, and talking about like blah blah blah, that would happen in an anime. And by the end of it, it's like, hey, why not be inspired by an anime? Like, she explicitly says it. Like, that scene was like, okay, I got it. I understood
if I can't do this, I'll be worse than an anime character.
Yeah. But like, I like the idea of the big ideas being conveyed with such campy and such like it is like kind of crushing the high art and low art divide in a way. Like, we have all these big weighty ideas from all the venerated and like really perceived as all-time classics anime of the history of anime, and we have ideas that I legit, while watching, spent like entire text walls explaining bigger philosophical concepts from like my own reading of actual like philosophers, just to explain a scene in Symphogear and why it's so fucking based in understanding these big weighty ideas. So like, that's the kind of scale we're talking at, while we're looking at like a stupid magical girl fighting idol fighting girl bullshit show. And that's just an incredibly fascinating kind of like synthesis, that just to see it work so well together, and just to understand like, what is the communicative power, the communicative capacity of art, no matter like if we draw it like high art, low art, classics, non-classics. Like, no, just, this is meaningful, this is powerful, and it stands in for all of those other anime that one might look at and go like, it's just, fucking bullshit. And I really like the sense of positivity that we have there, this channeling eras of influence.
Fucking based.
Hella based.
Yeah, but we should only talk about, well, not only, but mostly talk about season 1 here.
Yes.
If you want to do the other episodes.
Yes, in a sense, I just want to be clear, like, in a sense, all of this is in season 1. It is in the texture, it is in the references, in what the characters say and how they come to grow, and like, it is in there. But I mean, yeah, we should get into like the specifics, the nitty gritty, right? Yeah.
Because season one kind of like, as we said, plants the seeds for the rest of the series, like a lot of them. But it mostly focuses on it focuses on a few things itself, and it's very character focused. Well, I think Symphogear in general is very character focused, but like season one
especially so.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy character drama in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's all about what is in the mind of the characters and what is happening to the characters and how they interpret events that have happened in the story. And I think the big, incisive, and starting event, the traumatic event that we probably should first address, is the concert. The concert in which Kanade dies, and in which Hibiki is receiving the shards in her heart, which shall turn into quite an interesting situation for her later down the line.
She receives Kanade's song.
Yeah, I mean, she actually, Gungnir, what's the song title? Whatever. The song that she sings in the first half of the show.
Gekisho Gungnir, which is Piercing Spear Gungnir.
Is I think I recognize this, is a reflection of the song that Kanade sings when she uses her Symphogear in the first episode.
Okay, her first song, like Gekisho Gungnir, is kind of like about, like,
well, not just the lyrics, but
well, she has the same
melody.
She has the same song as Kanade, but that only comes at episode 6.
Yeah.
Wait, did I get this backwards? I did get it backwards.
You did, yeah. She starts off with like her own song. Like, it's about her doubts and like new responsibilities and great power,
and that is
but then
as well.
When she does like accept her new role and responsibilities, then she sings Kanade's song. Of course, it's different. It has different lyrics, but it's the same instrumental, same melody, everything.
Kanade is the first character which really emphasizes the idea of legacy in the themes of Symphogear. Because with Kanade's death, she leaves a legacy behind for two very important characters that are carrying on something from this traumatic event into the future. And this is I think crucial to basically everything that happens in this first season. This traumatic event where Kanade dies, and it basically plants the seeds into the future generation. And this is also how it ties immediately into the meta thesis of legacy of what other otaku are in this case, but it is Kanade. So very first in the opening, we already see there's great characterization going on. Tsubasa is nervous about holding the concert, and she's a bit uneasy, and Kanade goes over and like gives her some courage. Like immediately, you can see Kanade is like the go-getter. She's like the one who will get shit done, and well, she helps Tsubasa immediately find some confidence. So they start the concert, shit goes awry, and people in the crowd start dying, and Kanade is the first to jump out and sing her big song and the swan song and save Hibiki's life, and dies. For Hibiki, this left something else, a different legacy. For Tsubasa, who had now felt like, oh, the loss, the person who was giving her strength is gone. For Hibiki, she learned of protecting others. She learned of like the sense of this selfless sacrifice, and that her life was granted to her by someone else, and that she herself should, and this is something she does inherit indeed, and we see later, should practice some of these behaviors like Kanade did and help others, right?
Yeah.
So with both of these characters,
but
the first like 6 episodes, they're characterized by this, what they inherited from Kanade.
Yeah, they very much are, but I think there's sort of a, and I think this is more established through like the songs and stuff, and the transformation in Hibiki. There's kind of like a half-heartedness, like an absent-mindedness to her inheriting that legacy, right?
Yes.
She goes around doing it, but it's not in a way where she's,
yeah, she doesn't fully identify with that legacy yet. She just kind of
she does
sees
it
it
because,
as a sort of obligation.
Yes. Yeah, because it's an obligation. It's not so much that it's motivated and driven by her under her own power.
Exactly.
And I guess we should say the same about Tsubasa, because Tsubasa's issue is afterwards that she closes up, that she doesn't really find herself able to replace Kanade, and that the lost partner is still with her, but only in the sense that she thus is closed off from any other partner, and that she has kind of lost the idea that there should be someone else to rely on, which characterizes most of her interactions with Hibiki, whom she first rejects completely.
Yes, and there's like we can see this in the dream that Tsubasa has when she's wounded, especially, right? She's in free fall. There is nobody there but Kanade.
Yeah.
And there's just and she actually, like, there's this thing, she can't even understand what Kanade is saying to her. She doesn't she can't.
She doesn't get it. She just doesn't get it. That's her season 1 arc is like understanding what Kanade was trying to do when she was alive and singing and saving people.
Yeah. Well, why she put her life on the line? And
because
this
Tsubasa
beautiful
was
on the
doing
nose.
it because it was an obligation, and
she turned it to a weapon.
Yeah.
Tsubasa saw herself only as a weapon to be wielded.
Yeah, exactly.
As
it's Kanade who brought like the joy of singing into her life, and so when Kanade dies, that was gone as well.
yes.
And then the arc is to find that again.
Can we just appreciate? Can I just point out how fucking nice the like on the nose metaphors of like the swan song are? Specifically, like it is literally just putting your life on the line in order to in the fight. Like that is exactly what it is every time.
Yeah,
but I believe swan song is just like a specific translation from like one subtitle group, right?
Yeah, it comes from Kami subs, which in Symphogear's case are notorious for like having a lot of memes, including Swan Song. Like people don't like Swan Song for some reason, because I
love it.
I love it. I think it's by far the best translation of it. And now I just got the Blu-ray that Discotech released, and guess what? They use Swan Song as well. So,
fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Fucking bass.
Oh, that's amazing. Someone knew what they were doing there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. How does it feel to be validated by the official? Oh.
Speaking of bad memes that piss Will off.
What? I didn't hear. Sorry.
Heaven Rend. Did they use Heaven Rend?
Oh, no, they didn't. No, it doesn't piss me off. Everyone is just really funny.
It is.
So did they leave it as Ame no Habikiri? Or?
Yeah, it's Ame no Habakiri.
Yeah.
Smart.
Okay, well, that's nice.
I guess I can talk about this here because I did my own like subtitles for Symphogear.
Yes.
I took Kami subs and I sampled every other subtitles that were available and changed a lot of it. So my subtitles end up being Kami like typesetting, and most of it is Kami, but a lot of like Kami quirks that are like go a bit too far, like okonomiyaki becomes pancakes, for example, or Tsubasa starts singing and you hear her say Ame no Habakiri, and it's just written in big letters in the screen, Heaven Ran, and you're like, why? Like that kind of stuff I just took out and replaced with other things, but yeah, Kami subs in general are really good though. I love them.
I like the creative liberties you take. I'm a big fan. I like the pancakes.
It's a lot of fun, really. I think I kind of miss that sort of fan subgroup and the fact that there's only a few left.
Yeah, well, Kami are still alive and kicking.
Yeah, they are. Horrible Subs is dead now.
Horrible Subs is dead now. Holy shit, I don't even know what that means. Where do we get our anime now? That was always like the fallback. If there was no one else, Horrible Subs did it.
Someone else will step up to rip subtitles off Crunchyroll. But we're getting off topic.
Well, fair enough.
I mean, talking about subtitles is not very off topic. It's not very off topic, actually, because this show's about communication.
This show is about communication. It's true. And I mean, what better thing could we ever expect than to look at like such a decidedly Japanese show with so many Japanese references and so many cultural things that were only brought to us by the act of translation, which is highly thematically appropriate when we think about like. I wonder, like, when most people watch this show and they, like, have the ending and suddenly all this Babylonian shit is brought up with, like, the Tower of Babel and the god, like, in its anger took the language away and thus we couldn't communicate anymore. Like, without the knowledge of the other seasons, what the fuck do you even make of this? Are you just like, oh, cool, lore dump?
Yeah.
Because... I don't know, like, at first, I think first season I was like, why are they talking about this? This just comes out of nowhere. Only then going after watching the entire series, going back to first season, I was like, wait, this is their main thesis. And they just put it there like this, like they just dump it on you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Gotta stop and think a little bit.
It's kind of weird too. I think this comes from Kaneko, who's the creator of Symphogear. This comes from him being a JRPG guy. Because he was doing the Wild Arms series before.
Yeah.
So, like, a big lore dump with gods and shit, it sounds very JRPG. And
it's true.
That's where he comes from. So, and Symphogear does feel very video gamey, like, a lot of times.
Especially the like, structure of the first season. I was thinking about it, and it feels very much like, all right, we're having our story bit, and then we're going to have a big action set piece, which would be like some big in-game fight, right?
Yeah.
It's very much structured like that in many regards.
But while we're on it, this is a really good place actually to unravel the series backwards, right? Like we just talked about how weird and surprising this moment with the Tower of Babel actually is and taking the language away. But funny enough, this is what the entire series has been about so far. Because what happens when you take the language away? When you inflict the curse of Balal? We even got a name dropped. It's going to be very important in the later seasons. Well, you get noise. What is noise? Well, when you observe noise is kind of like something that grows out of like trauma and conflict and disagreement. Because I think like our main villain, Fina, what was it? She was hurt by her lover back then. And this kind of like deep sense of frustration and this anger and this sense of loss of trust in others is one of her main reasons for causing all these incidents with all this noise that she conjures up on the world, with all this discord she sows. And this is kind of like where we're at, right? Losing our language, as it is in the Bible. God takes the languages away, so we can't understand each other anymore. We panic in our because we had too much hubris trying to reach out. Well, this is what happens when we try to connect to others. We have so much hubris trying to think we can understand another person. Then we're hurt, and then we can't communicate anymore. And then there's a breakdown of communication, and all of it is noise.
Indeed.
Now, what do we sing through the noise? How do we reach another person again? Well, Symphogear is a very strong thesis. We sing.
I fucking just.
But it's the type of sing that comes straight from the heart, right? It's
Yes, that's the point.
It's not any song.
Yeah, it's the song.
Exactly.
It's the song in the heart. Believe in the song in your heart.
Exactly. This song in your heart, like expressing this, all the lyrics are like drenched deeply in what the characters have learned and all their determinations they have gained and what their like dreams and hopes and ambitions are and the legacy that has influenced them. The songs constantly reference that, but also like looking at them aesthetically, like their battle outfits are full of references. And this is again legacy, right? How human communication is a way of reassembling legacy in a way, right? Language pre-exists, our metaphors all come from fiction and fairy tales and legends, and everything we use to communicate a meaning to one another is, in a sense, mediated through language that is a legacy we receive to make meaning of the world.
Okay.
And pieces of art are the same way.
You know what, Nyard? I think that's really cool. And that pretty much explains what we were confused about when rewatching the show about the relics, because they come from like past civilizations with different languages. So
the weapons,
So the relics, the weapons the character used to fight, are also legacy in that way. No?
Well, most of them are historic legacies. One of them is the legacy of...
Of course, Ichival is just a Fire Emblem reference, but...
yes.
What reference? Sorry, what?
Fire Emblem.
Fire Emblem, Genealogy of the Holy War. It is a holy weapon made up exclusively for that game.
That's legacy too. That's
legacy.
It's
legacy, dude. Because the guy comes from the video game industry.
That it is. Carried right over into our anime.
Yeah,
exactly, and that is precisely what I mean, right? Like, perfect, actually. Like, we have these weapons and artifacts of legends of all the relics. We have the otaku legacy sewn into them, woven into them. It's all like this one fabric of meaning that can be expressed in song and fight and singing from the heart. And the more you sing from the heart, the more you connect with this tissue of legacy that we use to communicate our ideas.
Yeah.
Now I think about it, Genealogy of the Holy War is very much in that lineage of games about miscommunication and misunderstanding the past. And, it's also about prejudice and persecution and how that sort of leads to unwinnable scenarios. But very, very much suitable, I guess.
Reminds me of Turn A Gundam.
Yeah.
Another series entirely about misinterpreting history and the almost unsurpassable rifts that has caused between two civilizations.
Symphogear totally has a Turn A Gundam reference at the end, where when Chris uses her swan song and like blocks the moon laser, she sprouts out butterfly wings as she blocks out the moons.
Oh, I mean, that's also like a visual reference to Fate Stay Night, the Roias, which is maybe something that only I would catch.
Yeah, but I mean, the butterfly wings, in front of the moon like that, it just screams Turn A Gundam.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one of the most impactful visual images out of Turn A Gundam, and it's very central and the best ED of the series, and the finale of it is, yeah. Oh, that's a really good reference, actually. I like that we've kind of established this connection because, this is exactly the legacy we're talking about here.
Yeah, but speaking of legacy.
The main theme here.
Symphogear, also I guess it's kind of in the same vein as the relics, but the old languages and the lingua franca, right, the universal language, is also very prominent and it's all over the place, right? With they always use words like Sumerian words or Babylonian, whatever. I don't exactly know the exact terms, but like all their transformation like songs, like when they transform, their holy chants. That's like that's all
Yeah.
Sumerian, and the swan song as well is, and then there's stuff like Kadingir or the Tower of Babel
Oh.
or whatever.
Oh, I got it. So like the idea is that the Sumerian language is the one that was spoken before God basically gave the punishment of
Yes,
dividing
yes.
languages and people misunderstood each other.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. Actually, that's really cool. And just like
and
cool.
there's something really cool that they're gonna do later with that. I start with the song Apple, in G.
yeah, in G next
Yeah.
podcast we're talking about that. The next Symphogear podcast we're talking about that. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. That's gonna be great.
Yeah. So just to establish, like the concept of lingua franca, is that something everyone is familiar with here? Like,
Yes.
or is that something that Beth mentioning?
I mean, I guess it's something worth going over for the audience. I mean, it's pretty much the idea that there is a common trade language.
Yeah, it's contact language.
Sociologically, there's some problems with that in terms of like colonization and stuff.
So I had a very post-colonial education in linguistics too, where we studied like Pidgin, Creole, and contact languages. And lingua franca is basically the idea of the one world language that is kind of seemingly accepted as a functional trade language, which is currently mounting up to be English, which is of course due to the long history of colonialism, where the English blah 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 went around and had colonies all around the world with the British Empire, but instead of focusing on the colonialism aspect, which you're right is kind of like a historical relic, because of course one language puts itself like as the one contact or communication language, but in fact it is the idea of Symphogear here that there's some sense a language that is in such a way universal that we can use it to understand each other.
Yeah,
and that is the lingua franca.
Yeah, Symphogear has the idea of the lingua franca here. Like, yes, it's the ancient Sumerian language, but also because we lost that, humanity created two things to keep having a universal language, and those things are songs and alchemy. So
Yes.
yeah.
And if we want to talk about like the metafictional angle, that becomes art in general.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is
I think
fucking
alchemy
genius.
itself. I think alchemy itself is not as pressingly relevant in this season. Or
No,
I
it's
don't
not.
know.
No,
Not at all.
Yeah. It's gonna be relevant later on. We're gonna have an entire season dedicated to that concept. But that's gonna come then. For now, we're stuck with song, and with song we have a lot to say because we already mentioned a bit earlier that Kanade is kind of who gave Tsubasa the pleasure of singing, and kind of the season ends with Tsubasa being able to sing again, while Hibiki fights for her in a way, right? Tsubasa is having a concert, and we're seeing like that Tsubasa is not the weapon in this moment, her character arc basically being concluded, but is singing, this pleasure of singing that was instilled by Kanade, and Hibiki is exhibiting the protection, the attacking, the defending behavior that is also exhibited by Kanade. So in this sense, like, legacy is coded into this on every fictional level, like the characters are individually motivated by it, the meta fiction is motivated by it, the themes are driven by it, but on this level it's really interesting to see exactly how Tsubasa and Hibiki, who are, I mean, I think the main characters of this season, with Chris being like a good third, I suppose, how they actually like interact with Kanade on like an intuitive level, because both of them exist constantly in referencing Kanade. Like, Tsubasa sees her in her dream there.
It's basically the Moe diagram, right? Where Kanade is in the middle and Tsubasa is on one side and Hibiki is on the other, and both their arcs drag them towards Kanade in the middle.
Exactly. Maybe we should go into explaining the diagram. I don't know. Miki, how do you think about visuals, or else we're gonna like strain to explain it?
If you send it to me, I can put it up on screen at this moment.
Okay, perfect. Fuck. I should have saved the link somewhere quickly accessible. You have it, perfect. Can you also post it in the chat right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I recommend Real Prep Hours.
Real Prep Hours. That's a good suggestion. So just to explain a bit of the context of the diagram that we're going to be talking about, a friend of ours who has also been sharing in us in discussing Symphogear, called Moe Central, we met in Discord and we talked about the show a bit, and he basically created this diagram that takes into it I suppose, 4 aspects that make up the bulk of the show, and the 4 identities that make up the bulk of the show. We have, on the one side, the identity of Nichijou, the everyday life, being in tune with like your friends and having like your own interests and so on and so on. And the idol, which is like on one side. And if you're putting that up right now, we can also see that this is divided right down the middle, with, on the right, the identity of ally of justice and the identity of warrior, or rather in the Japanese terms, Seiki no Mitaka and Senshi. So on the left side, we see communication. On the right side, we see conflict. And this is an interesting theme that comes up, and we see names in this diagram as well. Hibiki, with an arrow pointing towards Kanada, in the middle, and Tsubasa also with an arrow pointing in the middle. So Tsubasa is, at the start of the series, completely identifying with the warrior identity at a loss of basically all of the other potential positions she could inhabit. That especially exclude her everyday life. Like, we see Hibiki kind of trying to connect with Tsubasa at the school, which fails. We kind of see Hibiki trying to like be an ally, be a friend to Tsubasa, which also fails, and so on. And on the other hand, we have Hibiki, who has to become more of a warrior. That is kind of her arc in this scene. She needs to move towards the center, away from her life, and she does leave a lot of her life behind, which causes her main conflict with Miku. Exactly. Thank you, Miku. And this fits into this diagram neatly, because it describes kind of like the positions where they are and where they had to go to approach Kanada, who embodied like kind of a synthesis of the Nichijou and the Senshi. And that symbiosis is caused through this like connection of idol and being the ally of justice, like both the fighter and someone who's like firmly rooted like in her own life and in her own passions.
I think and she she functions as sort of the crux of the first half of the show, bridging Tsubasa and Hibiki. Tsubasa, who views herself as a tool, unlike Chris, who has only been used as one, which is interesting parallel, because everybody around Tsubasa, wants to reach out to her, but she shuts herself off. She is a sword, etc., etc.
Yeah. But here's the interesting thing. Like this, in the upper part of the diagram, we see communication leading to conflict, leading to communication, and there's like in quotation marks, making up. Like, one of the core theses of the series is kind of that most changes will happen like this. You will communicate. A failure in communication will lead to a conflict. The conflict will lead to you communicating again. Through the act of making up, you kind of grow. In a sense, it is dialectics.
And Moe points out in this document, but I guess we can talk about it. Like, season 1 makes it really clear in that one scene where Chris meets the 2 little kids in the park who are lost, and they just like fight each other, but also love each other because they're brother and sister, right? And she's like, how come you fight each other but still love each other so much? And it's like, well, I don't know, we just fight and then we make up. It's just how it be. Yes, exactly. You cannot, in a sense, this is like kind of the thesis. You cannot be stuck too long in the pure conflict, right? The conflict is kind of like an unavoidable thing, and we will have to always grow past conflict, grow past misunderstandings, and always try to communicate in a better way. But exactly this act is what moves Hibiki towards Kanada into a more refined and more fully identified position, more balanced and more capable senshi, and also someone who's able to defend her life, to defend her friends. And the same for Tsubasa, who can reconnect with Singen through these repetitions of failure to communicate, making up, and by making up, growing as a person. And that's kind of like the constant negotiation we have. And this really ties into the main theme of this season as well, because as we already said, Fina is kind of someone who's so deeply hurt by this one event in the past that she seeks
aimlessly to destroy the moon, which is kind of like, if we think about it, right? The moon is apparently what gave the curse of Belial. I cannot help but think, isn't the moon kind of like a distraction? Like, isn't it like you're pointing at something to blame because you can't handle your own feelings? Because the moon explicitly, like, it's out there in the sky, it's so far away, it's kind of like an absurd thing to point at. And like the idea that this human condition that we cannot understand each other fully is like a curse. Whereas the entire series, our characters have grown with this curse, have grown by making up, have grown by communicating more and solving conflict. Whereas our villain...
You're right. It's the moon. It's always in the sky above you, obscuring you. It's like it's the dark side of the moon, right? It's everything under the sun is in tune, but the sun is eclipsed by the moon, right? So it's always like basically it's the scapegoat for Fine. But of course, Symphogear will do more stuff with the moon, but
But it is like Fina could not give up on conflict. She was so convinced that this is an irreconcilable conflict and we can never overcome it. We can never find better solutions to the issues in the world. This is why we need to destroy the moon. The moon is like, in a sense, like a empty signifier for all the things she thinks are wrong in the world, which ironically she in large part caused by bringing all the noise about, like for having this desire. And Fina's wish is, I will violently unite the entire world under me by bringing them into desperation. And this is how we will fix all issues of communication. Yeah, okay. This is like the perfect idea of humans cannot get better. They only need someone to tell them the way. Being a weapon, in a sense, is maybe analogous to this, because being a weapon means you are only wielded by someone. But instead, we need the synthesis. We need communication. We need to be able to have conflict and make up. And making up is what brings us better into a more ideal position in this world. And this is really what Fina was lacking and how she turned into this villain. And I guess also the worldview she taught to Chris. And this is how we get into Chris's character, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Chris has been molded to be a weapon. Unlike Tsubasa, who chose that for herself, Chris has been explicitly molded to not care about anyone else, to accept that the only way to connect with people is through pain. I mean, since she was kidnapped by Fine, who is, I think, at least in Chris's mind, very much this mother figure.
Yeah.
Which is,
and I mean,
really fucked. But,
Chris also had this worldview of like wanting to end wars, but the only way you can end war is I'm struggling to remember the exact words. Can you
beat the shit out of them?
Yeah, beat the shit out of people with power.
Yeah, exactly. So it is kind of Fina's mindset replicated, but it's like deeper, because for Chris, the conflict was also legacy, and this is kind of how we get to the flip side. There's also like you can internalize like some issues as well, like dealing with legacy. For example, Chris's parents, they died while being like philanthropic work for like anti-war activism, or like were they like medics on the field, something like that.
No, they were musicians on the field. Like,
musicians, yeah.
Yeah. So, makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, perfect, yeah. But they were helping people. So her parents kind of were like heroes, kind of selfless, but also selfish, which, by the way, is another idea we should look into. But like they were giving themselves for like a higher cause, trying to get peace going, like being musicians on the battlefield. And Chris felt like you, with your lofty ideas, with your naivety, trying to stop like the world from having war, you died and left me alone.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the legacy she internalizes, right? It's senseless to try and go about these ways. My parents died, they just left me behind. It just caused more pain.
Yeah, it's the way she internalized it is very like self-abusive, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Genjiro explains it to her though. It's just that they wanted to show her that they can still dream, right? Like, the naivete in itself is beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. Like, also, like, we gotta talk again about the scene with the brother and the sister, right? For Chris, it was, like, unimaginable that conflict could be resolved. So when the brother and sister make up, she's like, what the fuck is happening there? And, like, the whole idea that there's a kind of naivety to just being, like, siblings who fight and then make up because they're siblings, because they love each other. Like, this naivety, this escaped her completely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Indeed.
Okay, selfishness and selflessness. This is a thing that comes up multiple times. When Chris thinks her parents were selfish for going about their naive things and abandoning her, and later comes to realize that it was actually like a kind of selfless act to try and save the world with such hopes and dreams, I guess. But we have more selfishness and selflessness strewn throughout the series. It comes up multiple times.
Yeah. Well, basically every character goes through that. I wanted to talk about Kanade, but I get in regards to that, I guess I can talk about that too, because Kanade also has her parents killed, right? But we see it in a flashback. But her parents are killed by the noise, which, of course, the noise are like we can't communicate with them like at all. So what she enacts vengeance against is literally like discourse, like discord in the world. Like that's what she is fighting against, like by being vengeful against the noise. But then through singing, she finds it fun and finds joy in life again. But like Kanade, like it's always selfish, right? In the beginning, it's like, oh, I want
selfishness.
I want to kill the noise. It's like, give me a weapon, right? It's
and there's also like there's the grander kind of selflessness that goes on. Put your life on the line to save the world, all this stuff. But there's also like a very like personal kind of selflessness that also is kind of in contrast to that, because. Like when Kanade, puts her life on the line just to save Hibiki, irregardless of the fact that she's going to leave Tsubasa behind.
And that's also a form of selfishness. There's a wonderful dichotomy in Symphogear where at the same time we're at a selfless sacrifice, it is selfish because you were taking, Kanade decided to take herself away from Tsubasa, left Tsubasa alone. Tsubasa could construe it as selfish to go out in this way, right? I don't think she has. It is just that she blamed Hibiki for this later on. But here we have something to realize, because when Hibiki really becomes in tune with her relic, with her powers, is when she realizes that she also needs to be selfish about this. Which means, in this case, selfish means having your own reasons to fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the whole thing with Miku as well, where she, out of wanting to protect Hibiki, selfishly completely ruins their relationship for a bit because she doesn't want Hibiki to fight and endanger herself. So,
and there's a whole thing in this, because one of Hibiki's resolves is to be selfish in order to protect Miko in particular. And at first the issue is that Hibiki is kind of selfish, and by this selfishness, like keeping her secret life to herself, not sharing with Miko, her dear friend, that's kind of is selfish because she's lying to her friend to protect her, but it's also like lying to her friend, and it deeply seems to hurt Miku.
Yeah.
But also in the same way, in the same selfishness is not a unilaterally like negative thing, but it's also caring about your own values in such a deep way that they would turn meaningful to you. Like there is no life in which you're completely selfless. This is the same dichotomy again. Like selfishness in itself is such a negatively connotated term. Like when we hear selfishness, we think, oh, like someone is greedy or something. Not in Symphogear. When we're talking about selfishness here, it is often selfish things that we can even construe as selfishness. But in the same way as communication and conflict leads to resolving and making up, selfishness just means to be able to express your desire and follow your desire without going into these selfless ways which can be more destructive than anything else. Like when Tsubasa turns into a weapon, she is completely selfless because she's just following orders.
It's be selfish enough to protect yourself and selfless enough to protect what is dear to you. It's
and that is why Hibiki can say that I want to be selfish now and save the world. That is how this phrase makes fucking sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's very much, and I think maybe that's another point of maybe mirroring between Tsubasa and Chris here, in that Chris's desires are I think for much of the show incredibly selfish.
Oh yeah.
Right. Her theory is just, I'm gonna beat the shit out of them, and then There's no like thought for other people or what's going to come next. It's just,
Yeah.
I'm going to end conflict by beating the shit out of the strong people, because she's sort of internalized this fact that conflict is something that has deeply hurt her in the past.
Yeah. And you know what? Selfishness is also associated with liking, like vibing with your own music. She hates her song, in a way. She is selfish, but she hates her song. So because only when you're like selfish in the right way, when you're like vibing with your own song, when you're doing the communication, only then do you vibe with your song. But she hates her song because
her song destroys. But it's because she's
she's
song
selfish
that her song destroys.
Yeah, exactly. She's selfish and not in tune with her song, thus it is destructive.
Yeah.
But being selfish and in tune with your song, that's how you save the world. It's such a weird, interesting dichotomy that they like open up with this selfishness, the selflessness distinction.
Yeah, and it's when it's like, oh, I guess I can have friends. Like I guess I can like selfishly out of nowhere accept these people's friendship, that her song becomes different and not destructive.
The song is communication. She thinks communication destroys. She hates her song. She doesn't use her song. But she learns through the story that you can rely on others, and that even through failed communication, there can be a shared respect. I think she has an encounter with Hibike, where Hibike is like, I want to learn about you, tell me about you, this is my name, my blood type, my height, and so on and so on. And
I'll tell you
another
my
like
weight
moment
when we know each other better.
Yes. And there's like a moment when she's like, they disagree, and Hibiki's like, but I'm glad you told me. Something along those lines. And that's the moment when Chris is like, what the fuck is even going on here? Because for her, like, there is no sense in which you can disagree and still respect each other, but Hibiki genuinely wanted to initiate communication and try to understand her. And that is kind of what really threw Chris out of the loop there.
Yeah. And because Chris hates communication at that point, she just throws a fit and goes, yeah, well, I hate you. Because Hibiki tries to communicate. Well,
it's because Hibiki tries to resolve the conflict in a way that, she doesn't understand entirely.
Yeah. I think also, isolation is also very important in all of that. Oh, it's
exactly. In all this, it's like very much about because both of them are isolating themselves for Tsubasa and Chris for out of opposite
well, it's
impulses.
It's the curse of Balal, right? It's since we are like segmented in all those different languages, we are isolated, and we don't understand the other side. So since we don't understand it, we will make assumptions, and that will breed conflict. But
and I just want to say, like, we have to understand this not as like languages like French and German, but like everyone has their own private language. Everyone has like their own individual stranded in their own mind space and their own way of understanding the world, and thus we are isolated. That's like really important. And I think like, oh god, I just realized the swan songs are the song that burns with life. Why? Well, because even though you die, it is like being in tune with like your own selfishness and your own music at the same time. Like whenever you go to burn, it is not an act of selflessness in Symphogear's coding, but like an act of selfishness. And it's a song that burns with life because that is exactly the intersection where we find the most strength, when we can selfishly stand for our ideals and dreams through song.
Yeah, I mean, I think
realized.
I think
God,
when you talk about vibing with your song, I mean, you have to like a song is not like in the context of Symphogear, right? The song is a performance. It is something that is, for others to consume sometimes. Like if we look at like the idol shows, right? There are things that are meant to be watched and enjoyed by an entire crowd. And even the battle song,
I hope my feelings reached you.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. It's like a typical idol phrase.
Yeah, very much so. But there's also like, I mean, even the like songs they sing when they're Symphogears, like they are not songs that are specifically like they express what they want, right? So there is that aspect of selfishness, but there's also like they're trying to explain themselves to the audience as well.
But it immediately and always like kind of an expression of identity, of telling the world, who am I, what do I stand for? And that's kind of like what many of the characters in Symphogear at first struggle with. Yeah, individuality.
Yeah.
It is an individuality for one another, and that's the interesting thing here.
Speaking of that, you talked about like individual languages, like everyone has their own unique language, right?
Yeah.
Like in Symphogear, that's very apparent also. But Hibiki, what I want to talk about here is Hibiki, how she transcends words. Because
it's the universal. It's like a universal symbol of like an outstretched hand, right?
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of times during the series, you'll see Hibiki say something like, "I did not understand what you just said, but I'll try it." Right? I get it. I didn't understand, but I got what you meant. Right? So it's like the words are too complicated for her, but the feelings get across nonetheless, and I think that's very important, especially for Hibiki because, well, she's the main character.
Yeah. But yeah, it is exactly this idea. I mean, I brought it up a little bit when I talked about Hibiki's reaction to Chris, when it was like, I didn't understand, but I respect that you said it to me. Your feelings got across, and I understand you. You know, we can disagree, but I listen to you, I hear you out, and I want to know about you. And that's such an important thing as well. Like that conflict hinges on us not being able to listen to one another in that kind of way. I mean, not all conflict, clearly. Like, it would be kind of like way too pacifistic to say that all conflict can simply be resolved by hearing to what the other person has to say. But listening to them, and for Chris, clearly that was possible, resolving the kind of conflicts that were driving Chris away from communication, from reconciling, and driving her into her kind of worldview, that is something you could resolve. However, you could not resolve what happened to Fina. You couldn't. She was so far gone, she was going to take the whole world with her in her own unresolved like language, in her own misunderstandings, in her own conflicts that she could not get over. And that's the kind of moment you gotta step in, and then you gotta also use your song to tell the world that this is kind of the wrong way to go, the wrong ideas, the destructive way.
Did not understand Fina's motivation. Like when she tells her like, oh, it's out of love, right? Hibiki just does not understand it.
Yeah, but there's also... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, but there's also, I think, this sort of sense going on throughout the series is that there are other ways to communicate than words, and these are things that are a lot more universal and understandable, and Fina is won over at the end, right?
Yes. She is. Like,
she goes on, she loses, she goes on her big, motivational speech, and there's Hibiki who like lightly taps her in the chest, like right where the heart is, to sort of, I think, break her out of that. And
well, yeah, it's kind of a moment in that happens a lot in Symphogear where characters just sort of understand all of a sudden, right? And you don't really get like a big moment about it, and it's just like at their lowest, suddenly, like at the peak of the conflict, right? It just goes to the other side. And it's, oh, now I can understand.
Well, I think there's kind of a thesis running through this where, like, I think a lot of what interests me about character arcs in Symphogear is that they're not, like, even when they're resolved, they're not completely resolved. Like, yes, I think I remember that in season 2, Chris still has some trouble working with others and connecting to people. And like the same thing with Tsubasa as well. So like I think
Fina's arc is not over here either.
Yes. But also there's sort
surprisingly.
of yes, very much surprisingly. God damn it, they cast Miyuki Sawashiro and fucking jobbed her out in season 1. Just my favorite voice actress.
She is absolutely great.
Yeah, I mean,
so yeah,
it's hard to
Hard to see
keep
a go like
the
this.
secret when your villain and your and Ryuko are both, or Ryuko, is that her name?
Ryoko,
Ryoko
yeah.
are both voiced by, literally one of the most like instantly identifiable voice actresses.
But you
but
are
that's-
gonna get like a little bit of a make-up gift next season, because then we get Sugita, which is the other best voice actor of all time.
Oh yeah. Can't wait for Dr. Bear. But yeah, speaking of voice actors.
But what I was gonna.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
We can get back to the voice actors in a
Yeah.
moment. But what I was, the thought that I was kind of going down is that, all these things occur because the fight with Fine spans like 3 or 4, 3 episodes,
Something like that, yeah.
11, 12, and 13.
Yeah.
So like there's all these moments where Fine doesn't understand what's going on with Hibiki, with Tsubasa, and I almost said Tsunade. Jesus Christ. With Tsubasa and with Chris, and like it's only at the end, after seeing all of these things that she doesn't understand, that like when she loses, she suddenly has the time to process it all.
Yeah.
And then there's Hibiki.
Hibiki also just kind of wins her over with like, oh, well, since you're gonna be alive in the future and I won't.
Yeah. And
you pass my message, okay?
that's like the one time Fine gets it, right? Is that very end when she figures out like, oh, well, she's gonna sacrifice herself. I think that's like the one time we get that legacy that isn't misunderstood immediately.
Yeah.
In this first season.
Maybe.
It could be. I don't think I've paid. I don't think I have like a comprehensive list where I could just confirm that immediately. But immediately, I don't have any counter examples. I've not thought about it this way, but it could be it varies. Yeah.
Well, because it's obvious that Hibiki's about to go out there and smash the fucking piece of the moon.
Yeah.
God damn.
I also like, that's so fucking amazing. I want to talk about the structure in this a little bit, right?
Okay.
Because we've been discussing so many of these intricate ideas, but here's the thing that stood out to me. I kind of feel like almost every Symphogear season, this one being no exception, has like a really dense and complicated first 10, maybe 11 episodes, where every time there will all these character motivations be established and characters work through stuff and develop some stuff, blah, 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 and the villain is built up. And then episode 11 hits and the villain appears and states their goal and goes like, yeah, okay, let's fucking go. And by that point, if you really paid attention and really carefully analyzed like what was happening to everyone, you would kind of already know basically everything that happens the next 3 episodes, and you're just strapped in for the hype. And the hype goes fucking hard. Like some of these songs really fucking slap. Some of these singing moments where like there's all this, it's almost like the catharsis of the entire series is so much loaded into the end when like all these songs explode and every single one of the characters like belts out their determination and their newfound resolve to save the world, to do whatever, to fend off the villain here. And it's really like that you have the intellectual like struggle, or I say struggle, but you know, the intellectual engagement to really figure out everything, how it all fits together. And then there's like a glorious cathartic celebration where in 3 glorious episodes, everything blows up and you're like, yeah, I get it. I get it. And you just say, yeah.
And because they've been building to it throughout the entire season, they can get away in like, you know, some subtle and interesting ways. They can get away with some like high cheese, like the stinkiest of cheese. Like they shout Symphogear, I think 2 or 3 times in the last 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Like,
and then there's like everything in there. We go to space, we punch the fucking moon, like everything, and it's all there.
It's perfect.
So
it's literally
cool.
perfect.
And that's kind of how we get back to Symphogear being so deeply entrenched into like the crazy over the top anime bullshit, but also like at every point saying something with it. And we really have like this explode in your face in every single season when every time the finale is just balls to the walls action extravaganza, which is just consists of the anime trope that I always love the most, which is characters yelling during the finale at each other, like discussing their morals and values by yelling at each other and fighting.
Yeah, and Symphogear is so into that like Hibiki will have like 10 different catchphrases over the course of the series.
Oh yeah,
and she will yell all of them really loud. But yeah, I fucking love that. It's literally perfect. And I guess going back to voice actors, can we talk about how genius the casting is? Like,
oh my god, okay.
In this first season, right? Because
so I'm gonna yes, it is fucking incredible. Like, it feels like they used most of their budget to get the best voice actors possible, and then like because I like checking out storyboarders and episode directors, because that's something I'm kind of obsessed with. And there are no like big standout names in that list. There are a bunch of people who have a bunch of experience, but like they're not like, oh yeah, this is a guy who came from Shaft, you know, he directed these shows and he was an episode director in all these great shows. Like, and I'm sure there are some like standout episodes that these guys directed, because these episodes are not like poorly, you know, directed or storyboarded, but it's not like a huge legacy in that regard. It feels like they used all that money to attract the best possible voice cast, because they knew these people would need to sing these fucking songs.
And not only like in raw talent, like of course you got Nano Mizuki and like Yuki Aoi, but you need to like
Sawashiro.
Yeah, and like Yuka Iguchi, but you need to go back in 2012 when that show was made, right? Because Yuki Aoi was not that big yet. She had done Madoka, and that's basically it, right? So just think about it for a second, like the genius move of voicing Yuki Aoi as Hibiki, this inexperienced fighter and singer, and in real life voice actress, alongside with Nana Mizuki, who was already like a top idol in Japan, and also in Symphogear.
Oh, that's true. Oh, it's fucking true, actually, yeah.
And it would
Nana's fucking big.
The great thing about that is how Yuki Aoi basically reflects Hibiki in how she will interact with Symphogear in the series, and it's literally like the most meta, greatest accident and coincidence ever. he like Yuki Aoi will like uses Symphogear as her way to get better at everything.
So was Symphogear like big in her career?
Yes, she it's her most important role, and she says it a lot. It's also her favorite, yeah. But yeah, it's really based. And what did I want to say about that too? I forgot. Miki, what were you talking about? Like the voice actors,
storyboards.
I was talking about voice actors.
I just wanted to say, rest in peace, Tatsufumi Ito, the first season's director. He died earlier this year.
Oh damn, rip.
Yeah, he only directed the first season, but still, he also had some pretty cool cuts in animation cuts in this.
Now I kind of feel bad, because the next thing I wanted to say is that indeed I kind of agree with Miki that like a lot of the attention and budget went into the great casting, because as we can tell from looking at the series, it has like standout moment where it looks really good, but like if you compare it to any of the following seasons, it looks a lot weaker, like in most ways.
Yeah.
But all like directing, like the impact of the cinematography, the animation cuts, like what's even like the insanity, the visual coding of what is happening on screen. And we said it before, this is a very character-driven story, so writing-driven. You know, when it's character-driven, it is always also like mainly writing-driven. At least in my opinion, that's kind of how it usually pans out. Yeah. But like the coming seasons will have much more visually intensive directing in that sense, and it's really gonna be noticeable.
The genius thing about Symphogear, like as a production, is that it's an anime original, right? So they can like from conception, it's a passion project, and everyone involved in the project is passionate about it. So as the seasons go on, it's the same cast and same people who work on the show, and they only get better and better at it, which is really great.
Except
I
for,
think
of course,
another-
having a new director.
Yes,
Yeah.
a new director. Yeah.
I think another thing is that I feel like the later seasons are more clearly structured around like one or two works, whereas this one has to seed ideas from Rose of Versailles. It has to like the visual ideas from Rose of Versailles, from Utena, from from this, from that, from Turn A Gundam. From it has to like seed all of these things. Whereas I feel like later seasons have a more like unified sort of
Oh yeah.
like visual direction.
Yeah. GX is the Evangelion season.
No,
and,
GX is Giant Robo.
GX is Giant
Oh.
Robo, 100%. My
Okay.
dude.
Okay. When the whole alchemy stuff came, we're gonna talk about it then.
Yeah.
But because when the whole alchemy stuff came up, I could only non-stop talk about instrumentality. So that's where I was kind of at. But fair enough.
Like
Axis is
Command
the Utena
Chad.
season.
Command Chad straight up says, "Can the future be achieved without sacrifice?" And I was
I
like,
got it. I got it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
also central to Evangelion, but fair enough. Axis is the Utena season, I would say. Like, that's where I found, like, the most Utena parallels.
Yeah, the revolution, the new world order.
Yeah. Even the fucking red car.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, that's an XV though. That's an XV.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
that's okay.
gotta love that other reference too in XV. Or like,
Yeah.
they're fighting like on the highway on top of the hood of cars, and you get just like this one shot of a guy inside his car while Chris and Maria on the hood of his car, and he just goes, "Show me to the end of the world."
Yep. Oh, but here we're fucking out. Here we're fucking out. We have the first
Yeah.
season. It is full of references. It is very like all over the place. I think you told me, Will, that this was at first like not sure if there would be more seasons. So I
Yes,
think you
yes.
just went all in and just said,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
let's dump it all in there.
Yeah.
I think that also explains like the heavy lore dump by the end. I think like they would have probably introduced it like more gradually if they had known like there would be more seasons. But since there weren't, let's just dump our lore and hope for the best, you know?
Yeah, that's what they did. Then they got greenlit for one other season, and then another. And during GX, like during the production of GX, they got greenlit for the final two, which explains a lot of things in GX. But yeah, we'll get
Which
to that
explains why Axis and XV are so fucking amazing going hand in
later.
hand.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Miki, like how the structure of Symphogear, like what Nyard described of the early episodes, just putting all the thesis in and like intellectual stuff, if you will, and then the final like tree is the big climax where everything explodes, right? Now, XV think of that for the entire series.
literally just the climax of the entire series. Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds pretty pog.
And also, XV kind of is the Symphogear season. Like if we
Alright.
were talking about, because it's extremely self-referential.
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting way to look at it, like looking at the own legacy of Symphogear.
Yeah.
And it is fucking true, like thinking about it right now, yeah.
Well, I mean, even in like the, I've only watched a couple of episodes, but of course I've seen all the XV transformation sequences, right?
Oh yeah.
God, those are ludicrously insane.
Yeah, they make me think of. I think the only time I've seen transformation sequences more extravagant is for those Nanaha movies, because god damn, you want to see like
They
look up
go on for 45 seconds to a minute. The transformations in
the fate
XV.
transformation in the first Nanaha movie is like a minute and a half or like 2 minutes or something crazy.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what you can do like in a magical girl show when you want to have them transform every episode.
Yeah.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I kind of appreciate that we don't get those like. If we get a transformation sequence, it's because that character is going to be like vitally important in the next fight,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like-
yeah. True.
Like normally they'll just have they'll just do Tsubasa, or they'll just do Hibiki, or they'll just do Chris.
Or
Up
they'll
until
do
the
three
last
at the same time.
3 at the same time in some
Yeah.
sort of Shimbo-esque split screen.
Yeah. No, this is true and great. But like, okay, I guess what this brings to me is the season 1 doesn't look all that good, right? But it does have a lot of like really, I'd say passionate details about it, about like its visual presentation. Like they clearly tried to do really cool things, but did not have the resources to pull it off.
Oh yeah, I mean, like the
yeah.
tower feels like they were trying to do something out of like a Shimbo anime, right? It's really cluttered. There's a lot of different like visual ideas. There's a stained
Yeah,
glass.
it
There's
kind of looks like a fucking Madoka labyrinth.
yes,
So
exactly.
I just have to say it looks like the Tartaros from Persona 3, like literally exactly
Oh
the
yeah,
same. I'm
true.
posting a picture
True.
for you in Real Preppers right now.
Yeah.
Just look at it. It's a cluttered fucking tower, and there's even the moon. Like that's the design inspiration, in my opinion.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And I mean,
we
hey,
must not
Persona
forget
3 is
Kaneko's origins in the JRPG.
JRPGs, yeah. And the full moon is a huge theme in Persona 3, and it's also all about like these world-changing consequences of finding meaning in the world and like asserting your meaning against the world, and the dualities of like sacrificing yourself for others is a heavy thematic motif in Persona 3. There's no shortage of like similarities to Symphogear there, which is also, I guess, really important to see. Symphogear is fucking multimedia. It is not just anime, it is not just otaku media, it is also video games, it is also some Western media that is influencing it, all that shit.
Tokusatsu.
Well, I mean, I think in a sense it is still all otaku media
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
because
Kinda.
that is what a like otaku media is about, drawing on this vast wealth of multimedia language
Yes.
that has been developed.
Yeah.
And
True.
like the crossover between like video games and anime and manga and light novels is like a huge facet of like the otaku anime experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely true. And I
wait-
think
I can't
that's
wait
the
for-
main thesis it's asserting here, yeah.
Can't wait for certain references in the later seasons. They're just so great. It's just, and so like not things that you would expect. But yeah.
But yeah, we have a wonderful, strong thesis about making meaning of otaku legacy, and like kind of like an otaku media literacy is kind of like a meaning making device going forward, as a wellspring to draw inspiration from, to assert yourself, but also to communicate and reach out to others by taking inspiration from it, by taking parts of it into your identity, and by living by the examples and values that are so loudly shouted into the faces of your opponent in anime
Yeah.
and manga and games and other otaku media. I think that's a powerful thesis, just to
it's really powerful.
ruminate kind of on the kinds of meaning that the art we consume gives us.
Yeah. Symphogear takes like all these things and then goes, I am an anime, therefore I will scream it.
Yes.
Yes, 100%.
Which is precisely why it's so based.
It is incredibly based. Honestly, I feel like we should just leave off on that
Yeah.
final thesis, and
Yes.
we'll,
Because
we'll come
at
back
this
to
point,
it.
at this point, I only want to talk about G and GX and XV. XV.
Oh yeah, I'm so hyped for going on to go on with the series, because Will and I were rewatching it for this podcast, and we're gonna rewatch G before the next podcast and GX, but you get the gist. And it is just such a hype experience to kind of compartmentalize each season and like treat it as the individual things, make a podcast about it. By the way, very appropriate for Symphogear's themes. Like, we are taking our language, we're translating it into what we as podcasters can do, which is talking about it in a very imprecise, incoherent, and free associative manner, to then just basically say what the series does say much louder and much more intensely than we ever could. But that's how we do it. Like, we translate it, we do it into our own language, and we're contributing to translating the meaning of Symphogear and its legacy.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I guess I could. No, I would have some more things to say, but I can save them for later as well. So,
Yeah, we're gonna come back to this
Exactly,
probably.
yeah.
Where,
Yeah.
like, these ideas will come up again and again as we go through the series, and if we find anything to add, hey, there's so many opportunities for us to do so. So I'm really excited for this. Also, thanks Miki for giving us the chance to talk on your channel where I don't have to edit it.
Congratulations, dude. Speaking of editing things, don't you have something coming up soon?
Yeah, we're about to get ready to record the well, in a week's time or so. I don't know when this is going to be released, so I shouldn't give like a date. But on my channel, there will be the next Nausicast episode on Spirited Away coming up, and that's going to be one that is extremely heavily kind of challenging for everyone involved, because Spirited Away is not only like the biggest Ghibli movie yet, but the one with the most academic research material. So I'm gonna like spend most of the next week buried in books. But you'll see the end result on my channel, which is just named after me. It's Nyard, but you can also find the Nausicast on your favorite podcasting apps and Spotify if you want to look into that. It's a Ghibli analysis podcast. We go through all the movies, Miki's and some of them. So please also go check that out and look forward to Spirited Away coming up.
Hopefully I'll be on the next one if I can get up early enough.
I'm not in any of them, but I would have maybe some things to say about Tales of Earthsea when you get there.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Okay. I guess I guess since you're plugging yourself here in Yard, just like to make something clear here, I have watched Symphogear a lot of times, like so much so that I lost count, basically. I'm not sure. It's probably like in the 20 times. So I like my ultimate goal in life, not in life, but like one of my really big things that I want to do is write a book on it. So and I think I can do it because I have a lot of ideas about Symphogear. The only problem, as usual, is not being able to translate those ideas into words and communicate them properly, which is ultimately very relevant to Symphogear in and of itself. And yeah, so
Sounds
I think
like my experience with Utena, dude.
See, and I think it's interesting how you go about it, Will, because when I've been seeing like how you guide or follow people and go with them through Symphogear and rewatch it and talk about it with them. It almost feels like you're taking every opportunity to talk to other people about Symphogear and make some of their words your own. Just integrate them into your understanding of this work which already exists.
Yes, totally.
And that's a really based way of going about it, because it's like really literally growing and making more meaning of the world by communicating, by connecting to others, by forming relationships through Symphogear, which is just the most thematically resonant thing that you could do. And I think like much of our friendship and interacting came from Symphogear watching together as well. So it's the kind of base as fuck.
Yeah, it's so perfect in that way. And yeah, I guess also in that regard, when I did my subtitles, like I said, it's also really relevant to the show, right? Because it's translating art into another language, and well, of course, I did not translate it. I just took like what sounded to me like the best translation according to the scenes and stuff. But still, this has made me learn a lot of things about translation in general and how to communicate like the feel of the scenes to people and how do these anime subbers do it, and it was very fascinating, and especially like in regards to the thesis of Symphogear, and
also sharing the Otaku legacy around the world.
Yeah, exactly. And Kami like is very like memed in the Symphogear community. Like people don't really like them. Like it's love or hate, right? But most people don't really like the Kami subs for some reason, and like in the subtracks, they left a lot of comments like explaining their reasoning as to why they translate certain phrases that way. And every time it's just, that makes perfect sense. If only people could understand that, right? But yeah.
Yeah.
Look at you pulling for Herx, even though he shit talked you on your release.
I don't care about Herx. I just like his subtitles.
All right.
Hey,
All right.
we don't need to understand each other. We just need to respect each other. And you know what? I can take something from your magic, magic mojo. I'm referencing the scene. I don't know. That doesn't come across, but it's like
we understand your feelings even if we don't understand the words.
Yeah.
All right. You think YouTube will take down this vid if I just play Gyakko no Flugo?
Yes, it will. 100%. Elements Garden does not like their songs on YouTube.
Can we talk about how copyright is anti-Symphogear? Fuck that shit.
Yeah.
Symphogear's remix culture. Face it.
Hell yeah. I'll see if I can.
Yeah. So let's hope this podcast doesn't fall to the curse of Miki, and yeah, because Miki
Episode
is cursed.
8. Episode 8.
Episode 8, of which one exists, and the other one hopefully will continue to exist after finishing recording.
Yeah. All right.
That's blessed.
That's
I think that's
when
our
you gotta say,
podcast.
maybe I'm cursed, Miki.
Yes.
Say the hibiki phrase.
I've been saying that, man. All
Okay,
right.
well, I guess
On
that's
that note, yeah, it's a podcast.
It is.
Watch
Look
Symphogear.
forward to one coming out next week.
Yeet.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it. Yeah.